I want to welcome back to the program West Virginia Secretary of State Mike Warner. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, good morning. Great to be with you.
Yes, sir. I understand that you had a interesting meeting of the National Association of Secretaries of State. Talk a little bit about that summer conference.
Well, we met in Indianapolis, and pretty much most of the secretaries from across the U.S. Were in attendance, and one of the topics, of course, was cybersecurity, and that stemmed from the whole dust-up about Russians hacking the elections and that sort of thing. So people have their antenna up across the nation. Just for your listeners' review, 2 states did have their databases hacked, Illinois and Arizona. Now, nothing was done improperly as far as moving information or changing votes. There was nothing at all that got into the ballot process. Okay, this was simply registered voters' information that they got access to, but were not able to do anything with it. So nobody should be concerned that there was any, nefarious operations that affected the election. But this is happening. There is constant pinging or attempts to enter databases. And so what it causes all of us to do is to have our own internal operations reviewed to make sure that we have the latest and greatest, firewalls and backups and that sort of thing. So that took a fair amount of the conference. And what's good about that is you're hearing what other states are going through, how they're protecting themselves and their databases, and then where we go in the future. And what I'd like to share with you is that we here in West Virginia, I'm actually taking a little bit of a leadership role in trying to get the security clearances for secretaries across the nation. Having been in the military and have had security clearances before, understanding the process that it needs to go through, I challenged the Homeland Security person that was there talking with us that we need to have those security clearances so we can talk and understand with the Department of Homeland Security about the classified information, what is happening specifically. So it's almost been a year now since this hacking began, and Homeland Security knew about that prior to the election last year, but some of that information did not get to those of us who are in charge of our state's election process. And that's been frustrating for the secretaries across the U.S. We asked about it. We had a conference back in February, and we raised this issue with them. The Department of Homeland Security's response to this hacking was they named elections as critical infrastructure. And the importance of that is now the national government has more of a say or a play in the state election process, or that's their. Imagine what the national government has with regards to electrical grids or water supplies or Wall Street. They need to keep this country running, and so now they have made. There are about 16 or 17 of those national declarations of critical infrastructure. Now they've made elections one of those. Now the secretaries of state took offense at that. They said, we don't want the federal government meddling in our state operations. It's a states' rights issue. We want to maintain control of our election process. We don't want to have it nationalized. And for security reasons, you don't want it nationalized, because if there's a nationalized database or nationalized registration or election process, then you hack it that one time and you've got it. You can ruin the nation's elections, whereas 50 different election processes, the Russians or Chinese or North Koreans, whoever, have to hack 50 different elections to try to affect the outcome. So there is a security piece that we as states think is important for us to hold. So there's a little bit of tension between the states and the federal government on this. And so the answer I see is better communication. And you do that through us having security clearances so we can talk their language, know the information that they know, and then we are in the best position working with our state legislatures to get the funding and the proper programs in place to protect our own state's election process.
Yeah. Again, we're talking with Mike Warner, West Virginia Secretary of State. Now, you said that 2 states were identified as have been hacked, though no information was compromised. But wasn't West Virginia listed as one of the 21 states that could have been hacked? And like you're saying, Homeland Security never communicated that to the states.
That is still an open question. I don't think it's going to be totally resolved until we get the security clearances and we can have those open discussions. That has been identified. West Virginia has been identified as potentially one of those 21 states that has been attempted, or penetration has been attempted, or perhaps even made. Again, nothing has been given to me, nothing at all that says West Virginia's databases or information was compromised in any way. So I don't want anyone to be misled on this. We are simply taking the precautions because it is possibly, West Virginia is possibly one of those 21 states where it was attempted, and until we can have those classified discussions, I'm not going to know what the ramifications of those pingings or those attempted hacks were for West Virginia.
Yeah. Did Homeland Security actually attempt a hack themselves?
Well, that was one of the questions back during the election itself. Certain states gave permission to Homeland Security to do some testing of their systems. And again, it was never made clear which states they did, which ones they didn't. I know Georgia raised a big to-do thinking that they had been hacked by our own Department of Homeland Security. Some people let us know into West Virginia that we were one of those that they thought were also pinged. And some of this is getting the terminology down. You know, when you say hacked, does that mean it actually got inside the firewall, or does that simply mean attempted? And so I tend to use the word pinged. Ping is when it's constant, happens all the time, where people are trying to find a weakness in your security system, and if they find it, then they hack. They get on inside of it. But again, West Virginia has been listed as a potential state, but I do not know for a fact that we are in fact were compromised in any way whatsoever.
You know, we got that. You and I talked about this before, but you know, Delegate Marty Gearhart sent out a press release asking for a commitment from Governor Justice that there won't be any more revenues raised if the bond issue is approved on October 7th. And so that's why I wanted to talk to you about that special election. Do you have a final cost on what you think that's going to cost the state and taxpayers?
Right now, the estimate is between $2 and $3 million, and I don't have a better estimate than that. What we did is we did poll our county clerks, and they came back with their ideas of what this was going to cost, and that's how we're coming up with that figure between $2 and $3 million. As you know, the counties pay for this up front, and then the governor reimburses that, and I think that the governor has up to $3 million either set aside or available to reimburse the counties. So it's going to be a straight up or down vote. Looks like it may be a paper ballot in most cases. Either yes or no. Either people support the bond or they don't. So should be a rather straightforward election. And just for listeners, it's October 7th, a Saturday. Early voting starts on September 22nd. And if you haven't registered, you have until September 18th to register, and you can do that by getting online here at the Secretary of State's website or going to your county clerk.
And you know, you said it was going to be very simple, but I hope that the wording on that, and I don't know if you have anything to do with that or not, but I hope the wording on that particular issue will be very simple for voters to understand, so it's completely clear. Because I know there's been other referendums where it's almost it almost led you to believe the opposite was going to happen depending on which way you voted. So I hope it's clear.
You've got a great point on that one. And yes, it should be very clear. It's rather straightforward. I have not seen the wording yet for the ballot, but there was public advertisements that went out for the various newspapers and across the state, and it gives the details of the bond, how it's going to be broken across 4 years, and $1.6 billion total. We do need to educate the public as to how this is going to come down, and they have a judgment call to make. Is it worth the $1.6 billion in debt that we're going to charge the taxpayers and raise the taxes to pay for that, for the improved roads and the infrastructure that we're going to get out of that cost?
This week, we're talking to Mike Warner, West Virginia Secretary of State. And, Mike, this week is, I think it's through tomorrow, the National Disabilities Voter Registration Week. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, and I'm pleased you raised that because it's the second annual National Disability Voters Registration Week, and the idea is to simply focus on that segment of society. You can imagine that people with disability have special needs, special interests, special concerns, and their opportunity to have those ideas or concerns addressed is at the ballot box, so they can get people to represent them and their interests. And where this hits home specifically or particularly to me is being a retired military officer and having had children who served in Afghanistan. We know a number of people who have disabilities from their service. Now, disabilities occur in a number of different ways. This is just the one where it hits me specifically. And I want to make sure that those people are encouraged to vote, encouraged to participate. In fact, there's a little slogan they use, Rev Up, and it means the R is for register, E is for educate, V is for vote, and the Up is to use their power. There is 50-some million people in America with the disabilities, and they have a voice, and they should use this opportunity to register this week and then participate in the elections. So for this special election, there's going to be the opportunity with all the special equipment at the polling places, mainly at the courthouses, for people with disabilities to participate in the election.
And you and I have talked about this before. The cleaning up the voter rolls has been so important, and to have that done before this next election, the special election, so forth. The county clerks in all 55 counties have really been hard at work at that.
They have been, and you all there in Cabell County have been right up there at the top across the state. You've taken off about 12.5% of the total. You've gone from 59,000 to 52,000 registered there in Cabell County. That means you've taken off over 7,000 names. And people should realize these aren't people that are coming off the list. These are names that shouldn't have been there, whether it's the person is deceased, convicted felon, duplicate registrations, that sort of thing. So it's simply cleaning up the registration rolls. And the importance of that is that it eliminates 7,000 opportunities for irregularities to occur. Somebody to vote an absentee ballot or to vote somebody else's under somebody else's name and that sort of thing. So, and that's what's caused so much interest across this nation. And right now, the president just yesterday started the Presidential Commission on Election Integrity, and they're going to be looking at how we can restore confidence in our elections. Some of the people cited high numbers of people who do not have confidence in our election process. And I think the whole thing starts with cleaning up the registration rolls, and then we need to move on through at the ballot box itself, and the counting of the votes, and then the canvassing. We need to look at the entire process, and that's what this Presidential Commission is going to do. And by the way, West Virginia has one of our county clerks on this commission. There were only 10 or 11 people on this commission. And in fact, yesterday, the President of the United States opened this commission, and our county commissioner from Wood County, Mark Rhodes, was sitting at the table. So we have a voice. I think it's important for people to know here in West Virginia, we have a voice at the table from a county clerk who he himself only won by 5 votes. So he understands the importance of every single vote and how critical it is to make sure that irregularities do not occur. So, but back to Cabell County, I think you're about the 3rd or 4th highest as far as taking percentage in cleaning up the rolls. So I do a shout out to Karen Cole, your county clerk, in taking that on.
You know, one of the things that President Trump has said, basically he's saying that had it not been for illegal votes or votes by illegal immigrants or uneligible voters, he would have won the popular vote. Now, that's neither here nor there now, but it is important. Election integrity is important. And one of the things I'm seeing is that in different states, illegal immigrants are registering to vote. I mean, how can you, if you are not a legal citizen of this country, how can you be voting?
Well, they shouldn't be. And in fact, it's a crime. And in fact, I've heard of several states that they actually attend the citizenship swearing in, if you will, of these new citizens, and then they take those names and compare them against voter rolls, and if they voted in the past, then they look to prosecute or even extradite, send them back to another country. So it's an important, critical component of free and fair elections is to only citizens vote, because when you have somebody else voting that's not a citizen, it dilutes the votes of the citizens who are properly, by the Constitution, allowed to vote. So that's the importance of this, is you don't want to have your vote discounted or mean less because somebody else is voting either improperly, doing irregularities in the system. And I'm talking about things like voting an absentee ballot, or voting for somebody who's dead, or a convicted felon voting who shouldn't have the right to, and that sort of thing. So we just need to clean up the entire process, and particularly here in West Virginia. There are certain states that have histories of voting irregularities. And going back to the John Kennedy election in 1960, West Virginia has been notorious, but I can tell you there have been a number of elections since then. There was, the whole, everybody focuses on Florida from the Bush 2000 election and the hanging chads and all that, but there was questions here in West Virginia about that. West Virginia, with its 5 electoral votes, that's not many in the overall scheme of things, but when you're right down to the razor-thin margin that George Bush won by, it became a very critical state. So I think the best example was cited yesterday by Bill Gardner, the Secretary of State from New Hampshire. He mentioned a number of elections that they have been involved in. He's been at it for over 35 years, and he mentioned that over his tenure, he's had 11 elections that have ended in a tie. He cited 32 that were won by one vote. He cited over 200 elections that were won by less than 10 votes, and he cited a U.S. Senate election that was won by 2 votes. Okay? So that's just in one state, one small state. I'll bet that if we did the work here in West Virginia, we could find some very similar numbers where elections have been won by just a handful of votes. And so you don't have to have the massive fraud that perhaps the president was alluding to. You just need a little bit of fraud to change the outcome of elections. And that's what we want to get after and restore the confidence of people here in West Virginia that our elections are free, fair, and there's integrity in the process. That's why I've got my people going out to the polls. We had 101 municipal elections in June, and we got to 100 of those. And we observed, and we had anecdotal evidence from a number of those. It was the first time they had seen somebody from the Secretary of State's office observing elections in the municipal races. And they encouraged their people then to come out. In one city in southern West Virginia, the word spread throughout the city. We've got observers here. This is going to be a free election or a fair election. And more people turned out to vote, and they overturned, they put in a new mayor over top of somebody who had won repeatedly in the past because we had observers there. And so that's what I want the message to go out to West Virginians. We are taking this election process seriously. We're cleaning up the rolls. We're observing. We're making corrections where they need to be made. And we're going to investigate. If somebody sees an irregularity, we're going to investigate that and get after it.
And another aspect of the job of Secretary of State, and I know you have a leadership role in the Business and Licensing Committee with the National Association of Secretaries of State. But lastly, Mike, talk a little bit about that role for the Secretary of State's office, and how people can contact you when they have questions about things like that.
Well, anytime people are free to call the office. They can get on the website, contact us via that. We have a chat room where people can call, and if you're busy and you want to just put in an email or a question to our experts here in business and licensing, you can, and then they will answer. So we keep a continual dialogue. That's one of the things I want to do, is I want to continually outreach, taking government to the people and not just waiting for people to come to us. And that's why we've implemented the field representatives. We've got 5 field representatives across the state out working with the county clerks, but also reaching out to businesses. So let's say you have a business and it's a mom and pop operation and they haven't been comfortable with computers, but they want to register online or re-register. Our field reps will go to them and work with that individual or that operation to make sure that they understand how to register online, update online, and so forth. So we really are trying to reach out and improve the business and licensing process across the state. We like the slogan for the Business and Licensing Division is moving at the speed of business, which, by the way, I want to mention real quick. We are opening up a one-stop shop here in Charleston, which is going to have the Secretary of State's office for registering the businesses, the tax department, workforce, and labor are all going to be located in one office building on Washington Street. So if somebody wants to open up a new business, they can come to one location and take care of all the four of those needs and not bouncing back between different offices and different buildings in Charleston and so forth. Other states have opened up one-stop shops online and that sort of thing, but a physical location, this may be the first in the nation or one of the first, and we're doing a similar sort of operation in Clarksburg, at least between us and the tax department, where the tax department is just across the street. And we're also opening up a field office out in Martinsburg because of the way that the Eastern Panhandle is growing. And we're doing both of those for less than what we had previously had, the Secretary of State's office had in a Fairmont office. And so we're finding that the office in Clarksburg is being used more now because of its co-location with the tax department. We're sharing a building with the auditor's office, so we're saving taxpayer dollars by co-locating with another state agency. And like I said, we're doing both offices now for less than what the previous office was doing at Fairmont. So we're being cost efficient, but at the same time reaching out to the businesses and business owners of the state of West Virginia.
Mike, if you make things easier for people to get a business license, we may actually see more business in West Virginia.
Wouldn't that be great? That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
Hey, one of my staff just handed me the wording for the special election. So if you want me to, I can read it.
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, it reads Amendment Number 1, Roads to Prosperity Amendment of 2017. And here's the language. To provide for the improvement and construction of safe roads in the state by the issuance of bonds not to exceed $1.6 billion in the aggregate to be paid for from the State Road Fund and the collection of annual state taxes as provided by the legislature by general law. And you either vote for the amendment or against it. So it's a bit wordy, but I think it's pretty straightforward. You either want to be able to have the legislature raise taxes to pay for the $1.6 billion to pay for roads, or you don't want that.
What's confusing is, and this is what Delegate Gearhart sent out to ask the governor to clarify, is that $1.6 billion, does that mean that we have to raise taxes for that to pay for it, or does that come from what we've already got?
No, the legislature is going to have to raise the taxes. That's what the last line says, and the collection of annual taxes, state taxes, as provided by the legislature. So the legislature is going to have to raise taxes to pay for that $1.6 billion bond.
So that means that what just happened as far as the gas tax, the DMV fees, and all that, that has nothing to do with this. There'll have to be an additional tax increase if this bond passes.
I don't want to say it has nothing to do with it, but the last part of your statement is correct. They will have to raise more taxes to pay for this $1.6 billion set of bonds.
Wow. Okay, West Virginia Secretary of State Mike Warner. By the way, that website is real easy, too, wvsos.com, wvsos.com, if you need to get information on business licensing, elections, anything like that. All right, Mike, thanks a lot. Appreciate you coming on.
Sure, Tom. Thanks for having me on so we can help people understand the election, the cybersecurity, and all the other issues that we're tackling here in the Secretary of State's office. Appreciate being on with you.